to go. Congratulations, first of all, to the organisers of this Techxpo, and pardon me for reading off a piece of paper, but I just came back from Rarotonga last night, and I'm still partially submerged in a pina colada, so I just, needed a little bit of physical support. The Techxpo is a really great initiative, and I think it will continue to grow. They've built this conference this year around the question, could Gisborne be at the centre of a virtual world of technology? Well, I reckon the answer is yes, and like all good things, a respectful nod to the past and leadership to support both our past and guide us into the future is the key. So without further ado, ko Pene Walsh aho, ko te kaitiaki o H.B. Williams Memorial Library aho, and thank you for allowing me to share one of our stories of Tairawhiti with you. This one clicker. Believe it or not, in 2013, there are still some strange notions of what a librarian does, and it still revolves around dusty bookshelves and a lot of shushing. In fact, libraries and librarians have been early adopters of all things techie, but for us it's all about content, not the package that it comes in. We don't see many clay tablets or cassette tapes or CD-ROMs around today, but we still have got access to the information that's written on them if organisations preserve that data in new ways. Even out east here in provincial Aotearoa, the Gisborne Public Libraries has been one of amongst the first businesses to integrate online management systems, radio frequency technologies, free uncapped Wi-Fi for the public, and our first website was created in 1995 by Techxpo's very own Russell Holland. Well, you won't find it because it was like the penny farthing bicycle of web pages, but it was out there early on, and it chugged away through dial-up. Give you a bit of time for that one. Way back then, there was quite a bit of leakage, and our challenge at that stage, around the early 2000s, was somehow to plan for a kind of guaranteed, ever-changing future, one that supported growth, provided structural law, and naturally the bottom line, provide for economic growth. Okay, the bit about the law hasn't been going too well, but more on that later. And so to the internet tubes, as Senator Ted Stevens in the States was so famously how he described the internet after being told how it worked. So, well, our pipes are good now, aren't they? The pipes are coming, we've got fast data transfer, got future-proofing logics being applied, we've got second-level domain names, IPv6, and it's all good, except for a few power cuts here and there. Well, I heard for the first time from people who are not librarians at a NetHui conference just a couple of years ago from the Geek Brigade, and I mean that most respectfully as a badge of honour. Okay, pipes are good. What are we going to stick in them? What's inside the pipes? What are we going to do with it? Is the quality of the content good? Who owns it? Hooray. We were stoked to hear this, librarians, because we all knew and we all know that 50% of the metadata is locked. You have to pay to view it. Porn aside, we can probably assume that a lot of that closed data is really good quality stuff. And the rest of it is cats. We all know that. What the heck? Luckily, the call to leadership was heeded by a parley of people and the government of the day to create a digital strategy in partnership with New Zealanders for meaningful content. Not that cats are exempt from meaning, of course, but along with content, there was connectivity, confidence, and capability. Content is one of the big fours. Creators and converters of content have been generating online information for many years on a number of different platforms. There's been no waiting for the right platform. They've just got on with it. National Library of New Zealand in particular has archives like Papers Past, Te Aho and Matapihi, quietly filling up our pipes and tubes with our past, our heritage and our resources that inform who we are. Well, meanwhile, here in Gisborne, staff at the library have been ensuring that the local newspapers were being converted onto silver halide film. And if you don't tell anyone, over the last 20 years, we've spent 90 grand on that project, making sure that happens. And it's a pre-digitisation phase that enables the best possible raw material for digitising. And it's the only method that comes with a preservation guarantee. Silver halide film's got a proven shelf life of 500 years. And we've got a copy of each edition deposited at the National Library in Wellington, and we've got a copy of each film of each edition of the newspaper here in Gisborne as well, just in case Wellington sinks something. We haven't moved to full OCL digitisation yet because, frankly, we just don't have the pingers to do it. Closer to home, we had a slightly bigger problem. We had something that was rather special. It was a magazine that came out every month. The first edition was released in June 1954, and it cost 2 shillings. The Gisborne Photo News. And quite simply, the editor of the Times said, our aims and objects are brief. They are, above all else, to interest and entertain our readers with news of Gisborne in words and pictures. From day to day, our camera will be recording the contemporary scene in Gisborne and the district. We think you will find our pages a fascinating record of life in the community. And actually, that is as true today as it was in 1954, actually more so even. It ran for 2 decades through to 1975, and it's a unique record of a slice of social and cultural life in regional New Zealand. Got into colour somewhere along the line. Our problem, though, was this. Several years ago, it became apparent to us at the library that the Gisborne Photo News needed to be preserved. Public interest from families, researchers, and so on meant that our precious original copies that had been languishing in our stacks were being handled a lot and not necessarily treated well. Copies were being stolen and pictures were surreptitiously being snipped out. So we were getting concerned that we couldn't maintain a pristine set. We were receiving inquiries from all over the world about people, buildings, events, weddings, father and son, cub nights, and in one case, the opening of a fridge. It was £145 worth of fridge, and it was gifted to a children's home, just by the by. The inquiries were vague. I said, I think it was about 1970, my mum and dad's wedding, and in fact, it would be a different month, a different year, which is a fairly typical inquiry at the library anyway. We made several attempts at manually indexing the magazine, and the flavour of those varied as much as the people that were creating them. And so we needed to preserve a good set of the original. After all, it's nearly 60 years old now. We needed to ensure that the National Library, well, the nation, had a repository of Gisborne's social history, and we needed to make sure that what inside each copy could be accessed by anyone, anywhere in the world, as the descendants of the people in them by now could be living anywhere. And it seemed urgent, and it seemed that we better get cracking, and so we did. We had a really terrific start. John Logan, who owned the Photo News, gifted the copyright to the library. However, when we drilled into the magazine, we realised indeed that it was a magazine of the people. Hundreds of people had contributed photographs, and they actually still held the IP, the intellectual property, to those snaps. And it took library staff over a year to track down and request deposit of their copyright to Creative Commons. And thank goodness for Lawrence Lessig and the Creative Commons initiative. You've sort of picked up a bit about the Creative Commons from Wayne, so you'll know probably that it's a voluntary sort of in-between sort of copyright arrangement in lieu of sort of crappy ineffectual advances in our lawmaking in the digital environment, to be frank. And it has been several years, and still our government delays tackling this issue properly. I'm not sure what's happened in the past week regarding the GCSB. It's been Rarotonga, did I mention that? So I'll just leave it at that, except to say that space where Kim.com has become a local hero, and in part, rightly so, we might have lost a whole generation in this period of time to the nuances of IP and copyright ownership. The younger Facebook crew who use whatever images and sounds taken from wherever, like they're fast becoming bored and migrating to Snapchat. They don't seem to like having that autobiographical archive that they've been inadvertently creating on Facebook, so they've whipped over to SafeChat. It's got to be Snapchat, it's got to be here and now. So that's the one where you take a photo, you can send it to someone, lasts up to 10 seconds, and then ping, it's twinked out. It's very here and now. And I notice younger folk like Marcus, who was speaking earlier, I noticed a comment from him on his Facebook, hell would freeze over before his daughter got to use that. I'm really cool, I'm on Snapchat. I've got 2 friends, my son and his friend. They never send me anything. It's really, and then I've got nothing to send them of interest to them. So I need some more friends. No, we're not showing those to anyone. And this might be why we've got trouble monitoring the use of photo news, even though we've selected the most restrictive licence, which is attributive, non-commercial and no derivatives. We'll just have to see how it goes. So far, some of the uses is not really that much difference to cutting the pictures out of the hard copy. People are just using it, plonking their pictures on Facebook, transferring them over, not giving any, thank you, attributive comment. So, how do we go about it? Well, firstly, we scoped the project and we did a pilot of a couple of issues to determine the size and how to deliver it. We engaged Emmy Books in Wellington to convert the hard copies into encoded XML format using the TEI Text Encoding Initiative Guidelines, P5 revision if you're interested, and to present the results online and licensed according to Creative Commons and hosted on a purpose-built website. We had decided to go with JPEG derivatives of the page scans, and each cropped image an HTML representation of all the pages and images. Also, searchable PDFs of each issue of the photo news. So we think we got it covered. Repurposability was important to us as we plan to deposit the resource with the National Library, who will then take over the migration to future platforms, because that's not something that we have the funds to continually be able to do in the future. So, for instance, it'll be relatively easy to convert from TEI to ETS Alto or something like that, or whatever's coming up in the future. We use Dublin Core metadata at the publication level to provide suitable provenance information. These slides that I'm just popping on in the background, they're just sort of giving you an indication of what the number of things that we got into while we're doing it. So we've also created bigger offline files of all the images, and we've deposited those with Tairawhiti Museum because those who seek to use images might want to use them in publication of a book or something like that. And we made a decision very early on, that we were not in the IT business and we were not in the photography business. That's for others, and we value and welcome these types of partnerships. But you can see from all of these figures that actually it was quite a big job. And big jobs need big bucks. And this project cost around 60 grand, most of which we raised through grants. Once we got the seeding funds to do the pilot, it became easier to show other funders the potential of the project. A bunch of mouldy old magazines sort of is quite tricky to get your vision across. And if you wish to embark on a project like this, you really do need a vision, you need leadership, and you need to collaborate with others who are really good at their game, and you need a plan. But just get started, and those initial small wins will inspire others to come on board. But above all, never forget the stories and links are what your project is all about. For us, it was about our stories here in Tairawhiti, and if you could bear with me, I'll just share one of those stories and the little paths that can take by going through the photo news. Here it's 1963, and this is the Waiherere Māori Club rehearsing before they go to Waitangi to represent New Zealand to entertain the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. Up front over on that side is Bill Kirikiri. He's Kai Takitani of the time, club leader and musical director of the group. Right up the front here, this little cutie pie here, is 5-year-old Atamoana Kirikiri, Bill's daughter, and she was the baby of the group. We got quite interested in her, so we did a search. We came up with 72 entries for young Ata. Later that year, Atamoana and her brother Ria are waiting to go on stage at the Gisborne Opera House, where the Waiherere Māori group was special guests at what was then called the Māori competitions. But what really piqued our interest in this wee girl was this cover photo in August 1964, and this is what it said inside the cover. 6-year-old Ata Moana Kirikiri, the delightful little star of the Waiherere concert party, is the daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Bill Kirikiri, 75 Stout Street. She made her first appearance with the club's primary group at the age of 4, when they won their section in the annual Māori competitions. Now, we don't see Ata for several years, but she does pop up 6 years later. She's not named here, but we're pretty sure that that is her there. It's got the same sort of look. We're pretty sure that's her. And once again, welcoming the Queen, but this time in Gisborne, along with the Duke, Prince Charles and Princess Anne at the Gisborne's Rugby Park, and that was in 1970. By the next year, 1971, we can figure out what might be going on. Ata's 13 years old now. The marching girls aren't connected at all, and nor is that chap up the top right got a part in the story. We think he's just plonked there to take up that blank space on the curtains, completely unnecessary for this picture. Actually, Ata has just won the award for Outstanding Member of the Ngāti Poneki Club in Wellington, and the caption notes she's formerly of Gisborne, and that the cloak is given for outstanding qualities in various club activities on the marae, on stage, and all facets of Māori culture and language. So we know she's moved to Wellington. She doesn't live here anymore. The next year, 1973, Ata's 15 years old, and she's presented here at the Ikaro Rafti Māori District Debutante Ball, which was held in the Wellington Town Hall. The Māori Queen was the guest of honour, and we learn that Ata is a senior student at Wellington Girls High School, and that she has performed at the Polynesian Festival. For the first time, the debutantes, so this is a key sort of part of the history of this type of thing, the debutantes were presented in semi-traditional Māori dress with a full-length kaitaka cloak covering their ball gowns. The tipare, or feathers, replaced a tiara, and a mere was instead of the usual posy of flowers. There were a lot of firsts in the 1970s. Time's moving on. It's 1974 now, and Ata's 16 years old, and she's the bridesmaid of her sister Riki, whose marriage there is Te Whitu Opori of Ruatoria. The wedding was in Wellington, where the couple settled. And you can't see it here, no, you can't see it there, but the bride's dress featured hand-printed kōwhaiwhai patterns. Yes, these were very important descriptions in the days when what your dress was made of made the big news. Well, a year later, the photo news ceased, and we wonder what happened in Atamoana Kirikiri's life after the snapshot of her young years was captured by the magazine. Well, we just happen to know that she lives in Australia now, but you can piece together the story of, or one facet of stories of person's life, how they're coming and going. But there was another reason that we really got interested in this young girl, and that was a result of library work or a side effect of library work, and that's finding all these bits and pieces and puzzles and putting them together to come up with what might be or might not be a history. I was fossicking around in a second-hand shop and I came across this very important piece of visual history, a bicky tin. And that featured none other than Miss Kitty Kitty herself. It's not the same photo, but you'll notice that she's sitting on the same kurawai, and that same kurawai is still in existence. We have found it. We know who's got it. And she's wearing that kurawai in the cover picture of the other photo, but she's a bit younger here, and you can tell by her teeth. You can tell, you know, how kids have got the big horse's teeth, or when they come through out the other side. So that, and it's the visual interpretation tells another story. So that's what it's all about, our stories in Tairawhiti. 9 months on, our baby, the Photo News, has had well over 100,000 visitors and over 2 million page views. After the initial peak, there have been about 500 visits a day, which is not bad for a small magazine that hasn't been around for 30 years. And one of the things that we are proud of, and we had no idea at the time until the night that we launched the database, and we were informed that it was big. In fact, we weren't really not sure that we would have gone ahead had we known that in the first instance. We might have had to have a little lie down and put it in a too hard basket. The next great idea that we are working on at the library is mashing up this resource with the help of Digital New Zealand and creating discovery layers so that you'll find other relevant material to your search all at the same time. The Photo News was also franchised to other towns but printed in Gisborne. So for the smaller Nelson Photo News has already been digitised, and we hope that we can support leadership in other towns who might like to add their social slice of life along with ours. In fact, we've created a central web page for all the other ones to come off should they choose to do so, but still maintain autonomy themselves. Also coming up, we've already got a database of the history of and current information about the whole of Tairawhiti's street names, places, parks and what have you, but it's on Microsoft Access, was all we had, and it's very clunky, and our plan is to convert and improve that platform so it can be shared far and wide like the Photo News. So if there's anyone out there clever, because partnerships is everything, anyone interested in this project, let me know. We can talk. We haven't got any money yet, but you know, that'll come. I think the thing when you embark on a project such as this, the key processes I've sort of alluded to throughout is leadership, identifying accurately what your challenge is, planning, and mighty partnerships with very clever people, and just push it through to the end. But what really inspires us is how this initiative has really made a difference, not only in the preservation of the resource itself, but how it's been a vehicle that's brought whānau all over the world together. I see them chatting to each other and posting pictures from Canada to Australia to New Zealand, all through Facebook, because I'm quite good at stalking people I don't know on Facebook, so watch out. Because that's what it's all about. Our past leading us into our future. Thank you. Now I know you're starving, so thanks very much. It's lunchtime.